In this video, I'm going to install Windows Server 2012 R2. I'm going to install it in a virtual machine, but the process is exactly the same if you're going to install it on a physical machine as well. What we're going to do here first is we are going to put in the DVD that is used for the installation process, and we're going to power on the machine. Now, if you are installing this to physical hardware, you might need to tell the computer's BIOS to boot from the CD/DVD drive before booting from your hard disk, especially if there's something already on your hard drive. First thing that's going to happen is the installation DVD is going to load up a bunch of files that are used during the installer. And then if everything's going well, you should see this splash screen appear. At this point, Windows is just initializing everything that we're going to need for that installation process. First thing we'll do here is we'll choose our language and our keyboard information. Usually default is going to be fine there. And then we can choose Install Now. If something goes wrong with Windows 2012, you can always use that DVD and boot from it again to use the Repair Your Computer options. There's some cool stuff in there like bare metal restore, and you can go to a command prompt and run some utilities as well. We're going to choose Install Now. And what this is going to do is it's going to go through a very short wizard of things that we need to choose. Now, one of the most tricky things for people who have never installed Windows Server before is this screen here, and it doesn't seem like much, but what we need to do here is we need to make sure we choose an installation that we're going to be able to work with in the future. If we choose Server Core, that's fine, but it's going to leave us with only that Server Core interface. If you're not comfortable with doing everything from the command prompt, you could find yourself lost pretty quick. So what we're going to do here instead, I'm going to choose the Windows Server 2012 R2 Data Center Evaluation. And this option, even though it's not all on the screen here, you will see it does say Server with a GUI. Now, GUI is Graphical User Interface, and if you want Windows to have Windows in it, you're going to want to choose the server with a GUI. If you're going to use virtualization and Hyper-V, you're going to also want that data center because it's going to come with the ability to run an unlimited number of virtual machines within it. That being said, you should be selecting the version that you have licensing for. As you can see, I'm using the evaluation disk, so I'm just playing around anyway. This isn't for production. Instead, I'm going to choose the Data Center Evaluation Server with a GUI. Later on, I can choose to pull out the GUI if I want some of my resources allocated back to other things instead of running that graphical user interface. So I'll click Next, and I'll accept the license terms. And we'll be given two choices here. Do we want to install Windows and keep everything from before? Or do we want a custom install? Now, it says advanced. This isn't that much more advanced, except you need to understand that by choosing this option, there's a good chance that you're going to wipe out anything that was installed prior on a previous installation. So, since this is a blank hard drive, and your installation may be on a hard drive that is blank, you would want to choose this. In most situations, you'll always want to choose a fresh install of Windows Server because we don't want to drag around the problems from a prior installation unless we absolutely have to. If we can't reinstall something that was installed on a prior version of Windows Server, then we might have to choose the upgrade. But even Microsoft at this point is recommending try to do a fresh install anytime you can. There's some great server migration tools in Windows at this point, so you don't need to even stress about migrating all of your services over. So we'll choose that custom fresh install, and I just have one hard drive. It's 25 gigs, and I'm going to use that entire space. If I chose to partition that disk here, I can do that here by choosing new and selecting the amount of space I want to use for my partition. If nothing appears here, maybe you have a very unique hard drive controller, you could choose load driver. Now, one thing that does seem to happen in 2012 that didn't even happen in some prior versions of Windows is Windows Server is really designed for server class hardware. if you're installing something on a desktop computer, even just for testing, you might run into some trouble where you need to load a driver for your controller card. It's not super likely that the controller card is going to be your issue, but if you need to, you can choose to do so right here. I'll click Next, and at this point, the installation is going to happen without my interaction. It's going to copy some Windows files over and get everything ready for the installation, and then it's going to run through the process of actually installing some of the base features, and then when it is finished, it'll reboot and leave us at a place where we're going to put in a password. So at that point, we will continue. Alright, so after a couple of reboots and after, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, you should come up to this screen. This screen is going to ask us for our administrator password. So we just need to type in some password that's going to meet those complexity requirements. If you try to leave it blank, it's going to say that it doesn't meet the complexity requirements. Generally, these requirements are 8 characters and at least 3 out of the 4 of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. So come up with something that is sufficiently complex, and you can use this little eyeball button here if you want to see that your password is correct, and you can double check it if you wish, and then you can hit enter, and the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to finalize those settings and establish that password for the administrator account. And then, even though it doesn't seem like it's necessary, the very next thing you'll need to do is do your Control-Alt-Delete to sign in and put in that exact same password again. The first time any user logs on, a profile is created for that user, so it does take a little bit longer to log on the very first time than it will every time after that. A couple unique settings get transferred into that profile, and then once everything is done, we should see the Windows desktop as well as Server Manager, which will automatically launch once that installation is finished and that login is complete. You might see something like this, and this is an option that lets you allow in anything on a trusted LAN. So if this is a trusted LAN, and if you're installing a server, it probably is, you could choose yes for this. If you don't trust the network you're on, you would choose no. And then as you'll see, Server Manager will instantly launch, and this is where you can start to configure your server and all of its normal settings. If you're used to a prior version of Windows Server, you may remember the initial configuration tasks wizard would pop up at this point. Instead, we're going to go right into Server Manager where we can add roles and configure all of the initial stuff, which you'd do from right here. And we'll take a look at that in a later video.